Don't leave the presentation till last.
Like your pitch is going to be so important in bringing everything that you've done over the last 24 hours together.
Pitch. Be confident in the pitch.
Come up with a simple working product. Doesn't have to be a fully fleshed out product. It just has to be able to convey the message of how does your product work and what does it do.
Coming up with a good idea and actually sticking with it.
Actually come up with an idea that's actually solving a real problem.
The experience is more important than the actual product.
No matter what happens during the hack, just be nice to your team and remember that you're gonna.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Syncs Hack 2020. I hope you're all super keen for a weekend of lots of fun. So this is the first time we've run this virtually, but we believe we've prepared an awesome event for you guys, and hope you all have an awesome experience with it. So I'm quickly gonna do a welcome to country. So we acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional owners of the land on which the University of Sydney is built, which is what Syncs is part of. So the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation is upon the ancestral lands that the University of Sydney is built. As we share our knowledge, teaching, learning, and research practices within this university, we also respect and pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of the country. So Syncs Hack this year is brought to you by Syncs, so the Sydney Computing Society at the University of Sydney, Atlassian as our platinum sponsor, Abyss and VMware as our gold sponsors, Displayer and Acuna Capital as our silver sponsors, and Linode, Citadel, and Deloitte as our bronze sponsors. So they'll be providing mentors and careers fair reps and judges throughout the event, so you'll see them around lots. I hope you appreciate them, talk to them. They're here for you to, mentor with and bounce ideas off of. So to get the best experience out of the hackathon, get the best experience out of them as well. So without further ado, the prizes. So first place, your team will get $1,250. Second place is $750, and third place is $500. There's also a best algorithm prize and a best pitch prize. So even if you don't get first place, if you present really well or if you get a super cool algorithm, that could be prizes for you. There's also a best meme prize, which will be announced on Sunday. So look out for that. So I'm just gonna quickly introduce Rachel from Atlassian to give a quick spiel about them.
Cool. Thank you so much, Liz. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. Yeah, I work at Atlassian on the campus recruiting team here. And we are just really excited to be involved in Syncs Hack this year. We really love when teams come together to solve problems and to build awesome things that help others. Our whole mission as a company is actually to unleash the potential of teams. And we do this through creating products that help teams to plan, track, build, and collaborate. So you may have heard of some of our products like Bitbucket, Trello, or Jira, and if not, make sure you check them out, and some might actually be really handy for this weekend. So again, if you have any questions at all about Atlassian, our internships, and our graduate roles, feel free to reach out to any of our friendly Atlassian reps and Syncs alumni. So you'll see Andrew, Jono, and Luke, who will be at the Careers Fair later on today, and they'll also be running a workshop on pitching this evening, and they'll also be mentoring tomorrow. So feel free to hit them up if you have any questions. And yeah, all the best to all the teams, and I can't wait to see what you build.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, thank you to Atlassian as the platinum sponsors for letting us, well, helping us put this event on today. I'll now hand over to Sonia to present the schedule for the whole event. Sonia, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Cool,
It's an
cool.
extra mystery.
Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia. I am event coordinator of Syncs. So I'll be running through some housekeeping things for Syncs Hack 2020. This is the schedule for the rest of today. And after this opening ceremony, we will have our careers fair first, which will be split into two parts. First part is a industry panel talk. We will be having 8 industry representatives from our 3 sponsors, and they will give a short introduction of themselves about what they do in their job, and you guys can type in questions, and we will be reading them out to the sponsors so that they can answer your questions. After this part, we will be getting off StreamYard. So this live will be stopped and we will all move to Discord. You should be able to see on Discord under the Careers Fair folder, there's the Atlassian Abyss Solutions and VMware channels. Feel free to jump into any one of them or all of them individually and talk to the sponsors. So after the Careers Fair, we'll have 3 workshops presented by Atlassian representative, VMware representatives, and Abyss Solutions representatives. And after the last workshop, we will start allocating you guys into groups, which I will talk about a bit more in a while. So first thing after the schedule is Discord. So Discord will be our main communication channel for this hackathon. Everything important will be posted in the announcement channel, including but not limited to the mentoring order, which will the mentoring session will be happening tomorrow morning, and the judging order, which will be on Sunday afternoon. And in the general channel will be some other documents that you might need. So we will post the schedule for all 3 days of Syncs Hack 2020 in the general channel, as well as the Facebook and YouTube link, which you will need for the workshop and the closing ceremony as well. You will be able to find the check-in form in the check-in channel for now, but they will be posted in the general channel as well, so that you can go back to it and edit it. And once you have a group, you will also need to fill in the group registration form. It's now available in the general channel. You will also be able to find the marking criteria, the judges' information, and a countdown link to this hackathon later. And next, if you have any questions, feel free to post your questions in the Ask Syncs channel under Get Help, or if it's something very urgent, you can direct message any Syncs organizers. All right, and next. So about group registration, from now on, you should be able to use all the channels as long as you check in properly, and use the introduce yourself and or find the team channel to talk to others and try to get yourself into a team. After that, you need to have just one group member to fill out the group registration form. And then don't forget to go back to your check-in form and tick yes to this question so that we know you've already got a group. Otherwise, starting from 6:50 today, we will start allocating you into groups based on your answers in the check-in form. And then at around 7:30, we will be posting the group list in the general channel. So yeah, don't forget to go back to your check-in form and tick yes to the question once you've got a group. Otherwise, we will assume you don't have one and we will put you into teams with other people. Cool. So I also want to remind you about the mentoring session on Saturday morning. So it will start from 10 a.m. So if you're staying up tonight working on your project, remember to set an alarm so that you don't miss your mentoring session, during which you'll be able to talk to representatives from the sponsors, and they will give you advice on your project ideas. So each group will have 15 minutes with one mentor based on your preference that you put in your group registration form. And on Saturday, once we've posted the mentoring order, you should be able to see which mentor you have, and you can just jump into the mentoring channel on Saturday morning when it's your allocated time and talk to the mentor. Right. So finally, the judging process. Judging will start from 11:20 a.m. on Sunday. A Zoom link will be posted in the announcement channel. We will also be posting the judging order in the announcement channel, so keep an eye out for that. Each group will have 2 minutes for presentation, followed by maximum 1 minute of question and answer. And the prizes is just maximum one prize per team so that everyone will have a chance. And we will announce the winners at 4 p.m. at the closing ceremony. Cool. So that's basically everything. Oh, right. And now we've got Careers Fair coming up. So we've got Andrew and Jonathan from Atlassian, Michael, Mitch, and Ricky from VMware, Eric, Jeff, and Lash from Abbott Solutions. So now you can type in any questions after their introduction, and we will read out the questions so that all the sponsors can answer your questions. Cool.
Cool. Thank you, Sonia. I'll now start to add in our various representatives from each of our sponsors. So please give me a second. So we do have Jeff and Yash from Abyssus. I hope I'm saying that right. Solutions. We have Eric from Abscess. Okay, please give me a second. Unfortunately, I don't currently have Michael and Mitchell from VMware, but they should be coming in soon. Oh, I do have Michael. There we go. Eric is ready in the chat. Andrew and Jonathan are not currently in the chat, but we will get them in as soon as possible. But we might as well get started. How about we start from the top right with Abscess and go down towards left and right. How would you guys introduce yourselves and what position you are at the company and what you like best about your company?
Hi, so I'm Lashika, Lash for short. I am a senior robotics engineer at Abyss. So I guess, do we want a quick explanation of what Abyss does, or is that later for the careers fair? Well, I'll just say a little quick thing about what Abyss is about. So Abyss is a startup that uses robotics, machine learning applied into the inspection of critical infrastructure. So you're talking about your waterways, all the way to oil and gas, looking at dams, reservoirs. So we use this to do those inspections where otherwise it's dangerous for humans. Me personally, I'm a senior robotics engineer. Part of a lot of implementations of these robots, deploying in the field. I have a lot of experience from my PhD as well, and research career, and also now in this company. I think I've been offshore now maybe 3 months of my life. So happy to share a lot of my experiences with everyone here. Thanks.
Yep. So I'm Jeff. I'm a software engineer at Abyss Solutions. So I do software for both the data processing side. So basically what happens is Lash goes and collects data, and then it comes back and we process it to make meaning of it. So, and I do a bit of application development and stuff like that on the data processing side. I also do a bit of sensor development, write a bit of software for the hardware and stuff like that. Yeah, that's my job pretty much.
Hi guys, my name's Dr. Eric Ferguson. I'm also from Abyss Solutions, and I'm a senior machine learning engineer there. And so basically my role at Abyss is to try and put some artificial intelligence, I guess, into our robots and try and make sense of the data, especially when it's boring data. We don't like doing it, so why don't we make the robot do it for us? Anyway, I'm looking forward to talking to all of you later. Thanks.
Cool. Michael?
Hey all, I'm Michael. I'm an associate consultant at VMware. I'm actually new to this whole tech world. I'm not a techie or an IT person by training, but if I can feed that into the answer to the last question, is I think that's one of my favorite parts about VMware. So VMware, we're kind of the IT infrastructure guys, if you want to see it our way. We sit on all the virtualization that makes all these cool applications that you guys are developing run. And one of the things that I love best about VMware, I'm not sure if I've just frozen here, is that I can come in and be trained up by VMware and take on a technical implementation role, deploying all these really cool products that we have in the field, and that VMware supported me throughout that whole journey. So yeah, super excited to be here.
Cool. Mitchell?
Hello everyone. So my name is Mitchell. I'm an associate solution engineer. So I am pretty much new to the whole thing as well, as per what Michael said. So on the same wavelength there. My main role is to pretty much be the trusted advisor in the sales process. So it's pretty much a nice split between sales, tech skills, and relationship building. And the big thing I really like about VMware, and again, Michael said it super well, was the learning behind it all. There's a lot of skills that we're learning during the whole process, and VMware facilitates the education very well during the program. So it's been a great process.
Cool. And Jonathan, or Jono from Atlassian?
Hey, I wasn't here for the question, so I'm completely clueless.
Just introduction to yourself and what you do at Atlassian, and what's your favorite thing about Atlassian?
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm Jono, or Jonathan. Sorry, I completely forgot the question. What do I do at Atlassian? That's right. I'm a recent grad, started about 7 months ago, and I'm on the observability team. So what we do is, what do we do at observability? It's a big sort of cloud push to get more insights and being able to observe systems at scale, essentially. And yeah, on that team, I do a lot of platform and streaming applications. And my favorite thing about Atlassian, there are a lot. I would have said the ice cream, but now that we're all away from the office, I think it's just the community is still there, and just the camaraderie between people, and yeah, just the general vibe. Even though we're not in an office, we're still very much a team, which is and has been amazing.
Cool. By the way, guys, if you have any questions, please do ask in the comments, and I will put them up on the screen. I'll ask them to our panel. I guess I'll put this out to the panel. What is the most interesting thing you have done at work in terms of technological development or anything. I guess if you can't say everything out loud, I understand. But yeah, what's the most interesting thing you've done in your time at each of your companies? We'll start with Jeff and Lash.
Yeah, so Lash, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. So we basically made a robot from scratch to do a world first inspection of a semi-flooded tunnel for 2 kilometers, sent it through, and now we're doing the same thing in Scotland for 20 kilometers. And before, the job required 200 people and required shutting down more than 50% of the water supply of Edinburgh. And now we can do it with 5 people instead.
Yeah, so that was interesting for us because we went from a prototype to a platform that was used essentially to go through a 1 kilometer long tunnel, and it essentially centered itself. It was all autonomous. We did that within a short amount of time, and it was super rewarding when it worked out. That was probably the most exciting thing that we did.
Cool. Eric, how about you?
Well, I get the fortunate job at Abyss of doing machine learning, which is definitely a very sexy topic at the moment. So that's so often the work there that we do at Abyss has been really, really fun. So one of the things that we've solved recently is trying to find corrosion on offshore platforms. And if you remember back in the day, this was a couple of years ago, like Deepwater Horizon happened, a big offshore platform blew up. And that's basically because, and some people died tragically. And that's because, they couldn't find this corrosion and something failed. So what we're trying to do is use machine learning and try and find this corrosion to prevent disasters like this happening. And I think that's been a really, really fun topic, apply some cutting edge, state-of-the-art technology to these interesting problems.
That's really interesting. Jono, how about you?
So at the moment...
Sorry, no, Jono. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's all right. At the moment, what we're doing is we're scaling out our infrastructure to handle heaps and heaps of data, and we're processing on the scale of terabytes of data an hour. So it's a big effort to move from what we have now to something that's scalable for the future. And don't know if I can say much at the moment in that, but I think there's a big push to just making infrastructure that scales well and that handles big load. Yeah, we're very much new in the process as well, so it's very much a moonshot idea at this point. But yeah, cool.
Mitchell, how about you?
So I'll cover this one pretty lightly because Michael can go into a lot more depth. But basically, what I've been able to do so far is actually build a home lab environment. So using vSphere and hypervisors in that sense. So that's been a pretty good process, and that's been part of the VCP certification that VMware provides. So that's pretty much the main thing that I've been doing. And the cool thing is pretty much could do it all on a computer now as well. So you can go ahead and get a server if need be. But I'll actually pass it on to Michael, who's been working on a mock project, actually.
I don't know. Sorry, Brad, did you have other ideas, or are you happy for me to just kind of start talking? I realized I just kind of hijacked things there for a second.
No, you can start, yeah.
So I guess we're not, at VMware, the 3 people here, we're not actually developers, so we kind of come at it from a different angle. And I'm an associate consultant, so what I've been working on recently is taking some of that learning from the VMware Certified Professional VCP cert that Mitch was just talking about, and some of that home lab stuff. We're actually got our full-time implementation consultants who are taking all their pent-up rage at customers and unleashing it on us grads in a sort of mock project deal where we're doing a mock implementation on some servers that they've found lying around the office on a mock customer site. And so it's kind of interesting for us taking all that technical stuff that we've learned and putting that into practice with a customer environment, and actually, that to and fro on the human side of tech in business. And that's been what I've been learning about and what I find most fun at the moment.
Cool. Ricky, we'll go to you, and then I'll just introduce Andrew. Andrew is another Atlassian grad, and I'll come to you last, Andrew. So Ricky, the most interesting thing you've done at work?
Yeah, well, I'm currently working with Michael on the mock project that he was talking about. So I'm actually the project manager. So I'm not very technical, but it's been really, really fun, I guess, learning about all the technical stuff at a higher level and seeing how the consultants work and kind of what really happens in the nitty-gritties of these projects and softwares that we deploy. So that's been really, really fun. But otherwise, I love all the grads. We will spend a lot of time together. We are always jumping on Zoom calls, even though I've never met Mitch or Michael as they're in Sydney and I'm in Melbourne. But it's been an awesome experience just getting to know everyone and being in this like technology kind of space. It's really fun.
Cool. Well, hopefully the COVID bubble will be ended soon so we can all travel and do everything we want and have in-person hackathons. Andrew, how about you? What's just give a brief introduction of what you do at Atlassian and what's your favorite thing about Atlassian and what's the best thing you've worked on so far at Atlassian, if you can share.
All right. I'm an ex-Sydney grad. I'm working at Atlassian on the design system team. And it's a really interesting team because it's kind of a mix of design and development. So basically, you're not just, we design the components that all the different Atlassian products use. All of Atlassian's products, for the most part, are on the web. And we basically develop the React components, so the buttons and the labels and all the Leaf node components. So if you're familiar with Materialize or those other kind of design systems where you can grab components and slot them in, we basically built those. It's a really cool team to be on. It's an interesting challenge. It's definitely great to be working on it at Atlassian of all places. I've had a really good time working at the company. I think it has a really good company culture, which I think is what's really stood out to me. It's been a really great experience. And I think it's been nice to see how they've handled work from home, being able to work from home in a comfortable way and having the resources to make that a really nice experience for the month we've been doing it. It's been really nice. As for challenges, I'd probably say the biggest challenge has been, the coolest thing I've been able to work on. For Ship It, one of our internal hackathons, I worked on a project with another ex-Sydney grad and another person on my team. And we basically developed skip links, which is an accessibility feature, which doesn't currently exist in Atlassian products. And we built that in a way that all the different products can take use of it, which was really cool to see. And it's currently in progress. It got allocated onto our backlog, and we've finished it. And now it's reaching a stage where it's going to roll out to products. So that was really exciting to have that impact as a grad of 3 or 4 months at the time.
Cool. That is really interesting to hear. We might get into some of our competitor questions. So one from Sean. Hey Mitchell and Michael. Hey Mitchell and Michael. What did you guys study at uni, and to what extent are you able to apply your non-tech education to your current roles?
Do you want to jump in first, Mitch?
Sure. So good question, Sean. Hello, thank you. So actually, I studied audio engineering, so actually around the idea of acoustics and signal flow. So a little bit of techie background there, but it's in terms of what extent I'd be able to apply it, I think it also kind of comes from my work experience. So again, kind of relating back to my particular role as a solution engineer, I have a lot of focus on relationships and sales, so 2/3, right? And actually was in retail for quite a bit during uni, so I built up a lot of my skills around there as well. So in sense that I've had to definitely reshape my mind around learning, and that's as we previously discussed, VMware has been very helpful in terms of getting to understand their products, and we've been placed with mentors as well that kind of help build that knowledge up. So you can have that foundations there, but the good thing is that we've been able to build that up as graduates over the 6 months that I've been here so far.
Cool.
Yeah. If you want me to jump in, Sean, thanks for your question. If I can pick up on a bit of what Mitch said, similarly, I didn't study tech. I'm actually a lawyer by training. And so I spent kind of 3 years before I joined VMware chasing the corporate law life, and decided at one point that wasn't for me and that I wanted to do something different. And I want to say thanks to VMware for taking me, for taking a chance. And to your question on to what extent can you apply your non-tech education, I think that's something that at first I kind of struggle with, not knowing where my skill set, which seems quite far removed, fit into the piece. But I think there's a lot of things around customer focus and delivery, which lawyers have in spades. because that's kind of what they live for. And then also attention to detail and precision, which you can kind of pick up on and bring to any role. And then just, I guess I come from a more business focused background because as a company or corporate lawyer, that's just kind of what you do. You're always thinking about company objectives and how you can align those. And similarly at VMware, when we're looking to design customer solutions and implement those on site, and I think that's a bit of what Mitch touched on just a second ago. You know, we come to the table with fantastic technical solutions, but that's all well and fine. You really actually need to make those work for the customer in their environment and really listening to them and trying to understand what do they want and delivering that. That's I think something that I guess I can take from my previous role and move forward. Hope that helps.
Cool. By the way, guys, if you have any follow-up questions, please do comment in any of our Facebook or YouTube channels, and we will post them up in this discussion that we're having. On to our next question. I hope I pronounced this right. Selena basically just says it's so hard to find a part-time job or internship this year as a first-year student. Do you have any suggestions for them? We can start with Abyss and work our way down again.
Part-time job. I think for us, I don't think it really depends on how much effort you put into applying for a part-time job. I think the more effort you put into it, the higher the chance of finding a job. So I'm speaking from personal experience here. I was still at university when I applied for Abyss Solutions. So I was in my second year of university, and I just what I want to give is best sort of advice I can give there is to start early and like just look for a cadetship or just like an internship or anything you can sort of do, because as you can see, I have a full-time job here now, and the earlier you start, the easier it is. It's hard putting yourself out there, but once you put yourself out there and you're sort of more comfortable with looking for a job, the easier it becomes. I'm not sure if I can add anything else. To be honest. That's great.
Sure.
There's something that I'm able to add as well. Just, I mean, as a first-year student, obviously, when people graduate, they've just got a bit more experience and a bit more things that they can show. So, if you are trying to get an internship sort of in your first year, it's really, really good if you can showcase personal projects. Events like this are absolutely excellent, because basically what people want to see when they're taking a chance and giving out internships is someone that's able to build something, or someone who has a demonstratable set of skills. Having projects that you can showcase during an interview or put onto an application, it's a really, really strong way to sort of put yourself in front of others, I guess. So events like this are really, really excellent in moving towards that step.
Cool. Jonathan, do you have anything to add? No?
Sorry, mute button. I would echo a lot of what's been said already. I think as a first-year student, not many companies take on first-year students, particularly those that have only had, say, a year's worth of university experience. So personal projects, hackathons, anything you can put on to say that you are passionate about these things, and that you have an intent on learning, and essentially to showcase that you are able to learn and pick up things is great for any recruiter looking at your resume and
cool.
And your experiences.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Mitchell.
That's all I have.
Yeah, definitely, as was mentioned, projects. Definitely making sure you also kind of, enjoy the projects would help. So I went out of my way to do a lot of electives where I could actually physically make things and actually, demonstrate them. And I also did a lot of personal projects as well. So just mucking around with computers, putting pieces together. And sometimes, it doesn't work out, but the main thing is you learn quite a lot, and you can actually still, showcase that on that level. So I mentioned that in the resume and when you go through, but yeah, definitely projects.
Cool. Michael?
Sorry, I was looking for my mouse there. That's a really good promising sign for a tech grad, right? So yeah, if I can touch on something a little bit different, because I guess I can't really speak about getting internships in tech companies, but lean on your networks, and start building them, because that's something that's really important. At the end of the day, this is a people game, and if you're looking to get in the door somewhere, just even just like asking this question is a really good start. Get to know people, and that'll help you out a lot throughout the process. So best of luck.
Cool. Ricky, I guess from a non-technical side of things.
Yeah, so I think first of all, like Jono said, first years, I don't think you need to stress too much about finding an internship. It's okay that you can't find one, especially, we're in COVID and a lot of companies aren't hiring. It's hard even for a second year, third year, or a fourth year university person to find a job. So definitely don't, beat yourself up or worry too much or stress too much about not finding any internships. I really agree with Michael's point on networking. I think that's something as a commerce student, it's been like drilled into our heads. Always go to as much networking events as you can, add any of us on LinkedIn, talk to us, and lean on your uni as well. I don't know, in an IT kind of degree, if that is something that unis do, but for commerce, you could definitely find internships through your university. And if that's something that your uni offers, definitely talk to the lecturer about it, talk to your tutor. And I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunities that come up in the future, even if it's not now.
Cool. Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say my 2 points echo, I think, what a lot of people have said around side projects and flexibility. But on the side project side, like when I was going for the Atlassian position, and I know the interview process has changed a little bit with COVID, but there was actually a little interview segment where you had to run through a project you'd worked on and exactly sort of how it was structured and all that kind of thing. But and that was it was really good that I'd done side projects outside of uni in that case, because uni projects can be really tricky, and that sure, you've worked with a team and you've built something, but it's often to a spec, it's not a product, it's not something that you're necessarily excited about. Having that passion project that you can point to is really cool if you have the time to work on something like that, but if you can't, that's fine. And the other thing would be on the flexibility side. Yeah, definitely like talking to people, talking to recruiters, working out how flexible the programs are. Like I was able to get, prior to working at Atlassian, I had an internship at another place, and I actually went on exchange and I had to ask to have the program moved. And I was very lucky they were able to do that. I had a placement in a very different part of that company, and it was a really great experience, but it was more flexible than I had initially expected. So just ask. The worst thing they can say is no, but the best thing they can say is you're in, or hey, we've got an opportunity for you, and that can be really cool.
Definitely. Thank you for answering those questions, guys. I have a question here from Stanley to Ricky. Considering your background wasn't in tech, were you intimidated when you first got your job, and how have your perceptions changed of the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I wouldn't say I was intimidated because of two main reasons. So this is going to sound silly, but before I kind of even knew about VMware, so one of my friends works at VMware. He was there a year before me, and he kind of told me about the company. He said it was a great company, but I never really put too much thought into, wanting to work there or at any tech company at all. And then I watched Silicon Valley, the TV show, and I remember I was like, you know what, this is really cool. And I kind of really enjoyed their work environment and just the kind of really intelligent people that's in this tech industry. And basically how I got the job was I just decided to go to an event to support my friend, and I heard more about the company, and the way they spoke about it really just reminded me of Silicon Valley. And I was like, this is really cool, and I think it would be a really great opportunity for me to kind of come in and experience it for myself. So it does help that I am at VMware as a project manager, not a technical, not in a very technical role. So I don't know if that helps answering your question, but I guess the perception of the industry for me hasn't changed, just because I think it's kind of quite similar to how I imagined it would be based on Silicon Valley. If anything, I think I really, really enjoy just how smart and on top of things everyone is, and I guess how likable, obviously there's this perception that, and people might be a bit geeky or a bit nerdy, but I haven't really found that to be the case, or even if they are, I actually generally enjoy those kind of conversations and interactions. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of my take.
Thanks for your answer. We have another question from Bill here. There's a lot of talk about having personal projects for a CV, but I'm wondering if it is better to have multiple smaller projects or having a larger, more complex one. I guess we can have the tech people answer, I guess, because the more techie question. We can start with Abyss, with Lash and Jeff.
I'll go with this one. So, I mean, it really, so for a robotics engineer, for example, having a project which, you know, you spend a lot of time on is probably more appealing, but I can't say for other domains. Yeah, for within robotics, for example, you can work on multiple smaller parts and always join them into one big one. So yeah, if you have that in mind when you're thinking of your projects too, if you have like an ambition that's larger, even though you're working on smaller ones anyway, that's always a nice driver as well.
Yeah, I think I want to iterate what Lash just said. I think it doesn't matter as long as you're passionate about what you're doing. I think that when you go for a job interview and they ask you about your personal projects, I don't think they're going to really care whether they're small little ones or they're really big ones. I'm guessing this is what this question is targeted towards. So as long as you're passionate about what your projects are and you're passionate about what you do, I think that's the most important thing. I don't know if Eric wants to add anything.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think that the size of a project really determines like how successful it can be or what it can showcase. I know that one of the a silly project that I had and showcased, which got me my first job, was like just this thing that scraped some computer game server logs so I could see if my mates were online, and just like it's something small, but I was able to showcase that, and hey, it got me the job in the end. So having something that you like, something that you're passionate about, and what it's really doing is showing that you can apply your skills. And if you can do that, then your foot's in the door.
Jonathan?
Yeah, same as what's been said. It's less about the project and more about what you take from it and what you learn from it. So if it takes several small projects to just say, oh, this part I'm not really interested in, or I developed this thing and it didn't really work out, that's still a learning that you can take into interviews and you can talk about. And if it's a big project and it's something that perhaps you've poured a lot of time into, invested a lot of say resources into, and it's grown into something a lot larger, then on that journey as well, you've probably learned a lot of things. So yeah, again, less about the projects, more about the learnings and what you take from them.
Cool. Mitchell, I guess from a non-IT, because you did audio communications. So
Yeah.
From what I remember, yeah. How do you...
So, well, it's a good question. So even I actually like doing small projects personally because of the sense of accomplishment after getting them done. I'm just that kind of person where once I get something done successfully, it gives me drive to make the next step forward to do it even bigger. So I ended up doing over pretty much a good amount of time, like I think about 3 to 4 months. I actually did about 3 little projects. And what I learned from that was, it even just came down to like what my drive is in particular. But yeah, it's all up to you at the end of the day. And if you feel like you will get a lot of satisfaction out of a big project, which always will contain smaller parts as well, then that also works too. But yeah, as long as you learn from that experience, and again, even if you fail, the main thing is you learn from it, and then you can take that and go forward from there as well.
Cool. Michael, how about you?
Can I phone a friend?
If you like.
No, I'm probably not the best person to talk to about projects, so I might sit this one out if that's okay. Because this isn't an area that I know.
Ricky, I guess from another IT, like non-IT perspective, do you have anything to add from, I guess, a business side?
No, I probably don't. I agree with what everyone said. It really just depends on what you like. There's no better way, especially if you're just trying to, I guess it depends on your aim of doing it. If you want something impressive to show your recruiter, or if you just like doing little projects, it's really up to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Andrew, from a tech perspective.
I'd say definitely the rule of like do what you love, do something you really enjoy, something that like you finish all this, you know, uni work or whatever else on the side, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to like have some free time so I can build this thing. Like for me, it was just like, you know, playing around with like little apps or things like that. Like just pick something that like you really enjoy doing. It doesn't have to be the tech you want to work in. Like I don't do anything with apps now. I do JavaScript. I didn't actually know that really very much when I started on Atlassian. But the key thing is showing that you can learn, exactly what Jonathan said. Showing that you can learn a new technology, you can jump into it, you can be really excited about it. And that's what's a sign of what makes a really good team member. Any of these places that you might want to then get hired at is the fact that you can then jump onto that new technology like React and go, okay, well, I don't know this, but I've picked up plenty of things before, so let's give it a shot.
That was that was really good feedback, and for all our prospective students for getting future roles in possibly any of your companies. We have another question here for Lash from Sean. Basically it was, hey Lash, how aligned was your research direction to your current role at Abyss? What would you say are the pros and cons of doing research before working in a private firm?
Yeah, so my research direction back during my PhD and postdoc was also in like sensors, mainly in underwater, but also applied to terrestrial. So the thing about academia is you're aiming to write papers, you're not aiming to commercialize something. So yeah, that research direction has a pretty big impact on my role here as a robotics engineer, especially during the time I was doing my PhD. These things were very new. They didn't exist as a topic. So now, you know, I'm basically, you know, at the forefront of it. So that helps a lot to decide how things come together. So yeah, for me, I have pros and cons of doing research before working in a private firm. Yeah, you get that opportunity to go really deep into something, invent something new, and then yeah, a lot of people spin off their research into private firms anyway. That happens a lot at universities. So it's almost a natural thing. Cons of doing that is you probably earn a little bit less money earlier. Yeah, because you don't earn that much doing a PhD. Yeah.
Fair enough. I guess we'll have time for one more last question for everyone in the group. From Sean again, what is your biggest challenge, or what is a biggest challenge in anyone in your jobs? Let's try and limit it to one each, just so we can get everyone through. How about we start from Andrew this time?
Okay, what's the challenge? I'd recently been working on I had a PR that was in review for 3 months, and it finally landed 2 days ago. So I'm in party mode, and yeah, basically, in my case, the biggest challenge is I work again in a platform team. We develop stuff that products use, so we don't directly build a user interface or anything like that for consumers. We build these parts which have API, interfaces that people rely on for building their stuff. And the challenge that we've faced is around how to design that in a good way. I guess that's the technical challenge. I say certainly imposter syndrome and getting used to working in a company of this kind of scale and keeping on top of things and not, especially working from home, burning out is probably the other big thing. It's a really good company culture at Atlassian, but separating life and work boundaries when you're working from home in particular is a really interesting challenge. I think you have to be really hard about it because you don't have coworkers around who can call you out.
Sure. Yeah. Ricky, how about you?
My biggest challenge as a project manager is probably trying to understand what the consultants do without needing to actually fully understand what they do. So kind of being on top of everything that they are doing and knowing how long everything they do will take, knowing who's involved, what's involved, but then I don't actually really know. So I guess that's my challenge.
Sure. Michael, what's your biggest challenge?
I think it probably goes without saying that jumping into what is a reasonably technical role, for me, it's just been learning everything from scratch. So I guess I've done a little bit around digital transformation, but more around the people side and actually learning, what does the technology look like? How does it work? And just overcoming that barrier of no, you actually can do this. You you're smart enough, you can actually have a crack at this, and this is something that you can be good at. I think that's been a big challenge for me. But again, I mean, I touched on it at the start, but VMware's been fantastic about all the education and all the support that they put around us. So that's made that process a lot easier. But yeah, still deal with that every day, but it's getting better every day.
Cool. Mitchell, how about you?
So I'll keep this one short, but definitely communication. You can have all these great ideas and all these thoughts, but you've got to be able to communicate them properly back to people so that they can understand. And that's definitely a skill that is developed over sometimes years. And as I'm starting to learn a lot more the technical side of the job, the next stage past that learning is then being able to change that language, that technical language, into more simpler language for the customer. So definitely communication on that level, and that's a constantly evolving skill.
Definitely. Jonathan, how about you?
Hey, so a challenge. I would say estimating how long things take, particularly like picking up a new task and going, like in uni, when you're given a project or you're given an assignment, it's just, it'll take about 2-3 days, right? And the project is defined, the scope is defined, where you end with that assignment is clearly defined. But when it comes to like a work environment where you're given a task, there's so many different directions you can take it. There's no one definite answer. And so having to say, this will take me 3 days or this will take me a day, I often find it's often a lot longer than that. And just figuring out how long something takes has been something I'm still grappling with.
Sure. Eric, how about you? What's your biggest challenge?
Yeah, so I think university can teach you a lot of things, but there's also a lot of things that it can't teach, unfortunately. So for me, like running a project or managing people, university isn't able to help you with that. So that's a struggle that I had, for example, coming into a job. My advice in overcoming that is just try everything, fail fast, just try and get as much experience under your belt, and just try, and eventually, you just get experience and you get the knack of it. But when you don't have that experience, I tell you what, it can be tough.
Yeah, definitely. Jeff and Yash, how about you?
Yeah, so since we're on the bleeding edge of sort of capturing data for both, I think Eric's laughing there, on both, capturing data for clients and stuff like that, we're often under really short time frames. So what happens is we get a client, we're like, okay, we're going to do this job in a month. We have to develop all these capabilities that we don't have in such a short amount of time. And the challenge is sort of like figuring out how we can do it, sort of what are the sort of things we need to do, and basically we need to get it done. And sort of the biggest challenge is going from that idea to having it done. And that's probably the toughest thing that we sort of face, in my opinion, of this anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I guess I'll quickly just say, echoing what Jono said, that problem is universal, and especially even if you have a fully defined task that you want to do, there tends to be something, and especially if you're trying to come up with something new, and then you have interacting with a project manager, it's like, how long is this going to take, and the uncertainties involved. Managing that is extremely difficult. Yeah.
Cool.
That makes it difficult for me.
Project managers are that life.
Sorry.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions on StreamYard. So thank you all for your time. In the comments, I would like to let you all know that there are a lot of competitors that have been saying thank you, and they've given a lot of insight through your answers. And so thank you all for being a part of this video call, and I'll hand back over to Sonia.
Right. So now we'll be moving over to the Discord voice channels. if you have any questions that Brad didn't have time to read out, or anything you just want to chat with any of these sponsors, just go to Discord under the Careers Fair folder. There's Atlassian, Abyss Solutions, and VMware. Feel free to use this time until 5:30 to chat with our sponsor representatives. And after that, we will be having our workshops as I posted in the general channel. Thank you all for coming. Right.
And just to confirm too, the workshops will be in this stream, Facebook and YouTube link. So please do come back onto this, and we'll continue on with our workshops from there. Hello everyone, welcome back. Now we'll be getting started with our workshops. So I'd like to introduce Andrew and Jono from Atlassian and their workshop on 7 tips to get the most out of Six Hack. So please welcome Andrew and Jono.
Hey everyone. So yeah, I'm sure you will have been introduced already, but I'm Andrew.
Oh. Jono, is that something you were expecting? Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm Andrew. That's Jono, or Jonathan, and we're going to be working, presenting about 7 tips to get the most out of Sync Hack. So as a little bit of an introduction, so we're both UCID graduates. We both graduated last year. So if any of you recognize us, it's probably because you've been seeing us running around campus panicking about honors. And we're done now, and we're both working at Atlassian. It's really cool to be on the other end, not as like an organizer or participant from Sync Hack or something like this, but to be on the end of a mentor. It's really cool. Can't wait to see what everyone's building. I'll just type that. So before I continue, I guess it's the question of what is Atlassian? Atlassian is a company that builds products for teams. That's probably the simplest way to explain it. And our goal, we basically believe that behind every great human achievement is a team. And our mission is to unleash the potential in every team. And we do that through a bunch of different products, which are pretty nifty. The ones you probably used in university are Trello and Bitbucket. But in the industry in particular, Confluence and Jira are other 2 major products that people use a lot. And they're pretty nifty products. Let's use them internally quite a bit. And it's a really innovation weeks where the sort of entire teams get the time to work on whatever they want to work on and take up cool projects. And one of the really cool ones is Ship It, which is basically a hackathon internally run inside of Atlassian, where everyone gets 24 hours to form up teams and work on whatever they want to work on and deliver it. And it's a really cool little opportunity. And yeah, as a result, we have some experience doing hackathons internally, and it's a big part of the company culture. In fact, the graduate program, we started 2 quarters ago, if you're going by sort of business quarter speak. And those last 2 quarters, when the last 2 Ship It's that have run, the winning projects have been from new grads. So there's a lot of opportunity to make an impact, and Ship It's been really cool for that. So we have, as the name suggests, 7 key tips for getting the most out of Sync Hack. And they'll follow a bunch of different parts of the hackathon process. So obviously, there's the main criteria for Sync Hack. I'm sure you've seen it. We'll be touching on this a little bit. And you probably are familiar with the format, which is you come up with an idea, you form a team, you sort of try and work out what that idea is, and then you develop it and pitch it. They're sort of the 3 stages. The 3 stages: ideation, iteration, and then presentation to the judges. And sort of we're going to break up and split up our 7 tips between those. So to start with ideation, I'm going to hand off to Jonathan.
Cool. Yeah. So with hackathons, the idea, or it's really a chance for you to go big, right? Here you have the opportunity to explore those moonshot ideas, and many seasoned teams come in with maybe an idea already formed. And if that's you, nice. You've probably already done this before. But if you don't have an idea, well, then no worries. Don't stress, because you have time as a team to form a new idea. And maybe taking back on your experiences, casting your mind back, think about problems which perhaps have really frustrated you in the past, or things which you've always been meaning to build, maybe a technology that you've always wanted to explore. Whatever that may be, you as a team will need to agree on an idea. So here's a little technique for generating those ideas, which I'd like to share with you. It's called Crazy 8. And with the Crazy 8 technique, the first step really is for everyone to grab a piece of paper and fold it into 8 sections, right? And then the next step here, you can choose to freestyle or start with either a problem space or a general prompt. For example, a problem space might be, hey, I want to make learning from home more fun. Or a prompt could be, I want to explore this flocking algorithm, which I've just discovered. Has anyone heard of the flocking algorithm before? It's like this algorithm or to simulate how birds fly as a flock, where they're close together but not too close, in that they'd bump into each other, right? And you get really beautiful emergent patterns from this. So let's take this idea of the flocking behavior and apply this to the Crazy 8 framework. So step 2 would be spend 10 minutes individually and brainstorm 8 solutions to either that idea or freestyle. You might, first off, there's a catch. There's always a catch. Each subsequent idea that you write down needs to be crazier than the last. Okay, so you might start with, hey, I want to simulate birds flying in the browser. Okay, and then your next idea could be, well, maybe those birds follow your cursor. Okay, and then your next idea could be, oh, maybe those birds are seagulls and your cursor is a chip, right? Or instead of birds, maybe we could have planetary systems that move around and orbit one another. And then maybe, oh, okay, well, instead of birds, planetary systems, maybe like a manta ray, a flock of manta rays, and you could emulate like a Flappy Bird style game some way in that, right? So hopefully you get the idea. Each idea that you write should be crazier than the last, and it's really a chance to push that boundary and make your idea big. And the third and final step, once you have those 8 ideas, or 10 minutes, if you want to time box that time, the third thing is to then share those ideas with the team. So really discuss what resonates with you for each idea. And we want to identify specific aspects from everyone's ideas that everyone can get behind, right? So the goal here isn't to choose one idea, but rather gather different parts from different ideas. And the final solution is ultimately a collective effort, one that you can collectively build from everyone's best ideas. So now, having gone through the Crazy 8 technique and you have that grand idea, which the team agrees on, Andrew, how do you go about it?
Well, good thing you asked. The next point is around choosing a minimum viable product, tip number 2. So, minimum viable product is basically behind any big product. It's a simple idea that contains just the basic functions required to achieve the key purpose. So, you've got this big moonshot, but you only have 24 hours to build it. So you've got to settle on something that's a little bit more achievable that you can really use to pitch what your idea could be in the long run. So the Wikipedia definition of an MVP is a version of a product with just enough features to satisfy early customers and provide feedback for future product development, or in hackathon speak, something useful you can reasonably build in 24 hours that you can convince people of the potential. So now that I've got that definition out of the way, a good exercise to practice coming up with an MVP and work out what you could reasonably build is pick a product that you like to use and then work out what the MVP would look like for that. So let's look at Trello. Trello is an Atlassian product, but it's also just generally a really cool product. And it seems kind of straightforward as something you might want to build at a hackathon. You've got these cards and columns and stuff like that. So what would the MVP look like, right? You've only got 24 hours. Imagine you were the founders of Trello. And what would you build? Well, let's look at a screen from Trello right now. It's got columns, cards, it's got categories. You can comment on the cards, you can add people. There are like these butler automations as well as power-ups for like getting third-party integrations in. It's really cool. That is a lot of features though, and you couldn't build that in 24 hours. And even if that's in your idea of like the big moonshot of like, wow, you can really customize your workflow, you can't necessarily build that all at once. So, what's the root idea? It's something like sort of Trello 1.0. What's that MVP that they use to pitch the idea of like this flexible board of ideas? And that is this. This is the first version of Trello. And as you can see, it's much simpler, but it has 80% of the functionality and usefulness of this product. It's a bunch of vertical columns with text in cards that you can move around, and that's it. But that's pretty flexible and pretty cool. And you can sell people on exactly what this could look like in the future. Based from that. It's a good starting point. This stage where you're working out that MVP, it's a key period for you to work out and look into the different criteria for a hackathon like this one. So in this case, for example, there are two key ones that are really affected, which is the level of innovation and the practicality of the solution. So basically, you know, you've got this moonshot, you're pressing it down, but that could mean that you lose the things that make this thing, this idea of yours, innovative or practical. You want to make sure that, you know, your idea is still unique when you're simplifying it down for an MVP, which can be tough, but you've got to keep that in mind if you are willing, if you're interested in really trying to get that criteria nailed. And on the practicality side, you've got to make sure that it actually is something useful in the end. There's nothing, well, like the best thing that you can hear if you're working on a hackathon project is, wow, I really want to use this. I can't wait to try this out. Like, do you have a copy? Like, do you have a link I can put on my phone? I want to use this. That's the best feeling in the world. I've always seen, like, whenever I've seen that happen with projects, like everyone's faces light up. It's just a really cool moment. And it's a really good thing to aim for. And of course, the next thing is when you settle on that MVP, you want to know what all the technical challenges are for your idea. So you want to have an idea of how they'll be divided up, but also just generally what those technical challenges are. You know, if you're going for like a really technical project, that's sort of like the hero that you're trying to like show off. Like, hey, we built this in 24 hours. That's really cool. But you want to get that worked out at this stage, so you're not trying to work that out on the fly. So sweet, you know, you've built all of that. You finished your ideation, you've got your MVP. It's time to iterate and start building. And that gets on to the next ones, which I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Cool. So in the iteration phase, you really want to work smart here, right? You don't want to reinvent the wheel. So you can jump so many obstacles and avoid so much headache and debugging by leveraging existing tools and APIs. So as an example, if you're building, say, a web app or a mobile application, there's likely a bootstrap script or a working template which you can make use of and bring up your bare bones application. So if you search like Hackathon starter on GitHub, you'll find endless implementations and across multiple different languages as well. So with that, you get out-of-the-box theming, account management, OAuth into Facebook, Google, GitHub, for example, and you get API stubs as well if you ever need to hook into Twitter, Foursquare, or Yelp for those reviews that you might want to pull into your application. And you get all this for free, right? You don't have to worry about setting these up. So if you're building something which involves real-time messaging, for example, and that could be across different devices across the network, don't bother hacking your way around low-level network protocols, byte streams, right? Slack, make use of their real-time messaging API, or maybe one step above that, you could build like a Facebook chatbot or a Discord bot, right? So there's a saying that makes rounds, and you've probably heard of it: the best code is the one you didn't write. So like, stand on the shoulders of giants, use those existing tools, those existing services. And in a similar vein, the best code is the one you didn't write. This also leads me into my next tip, which is mock all the things, right? Mock all the complex bits out. A big mistake when teams first start up at the very beginning of the hackathon is like, what's the best backend framework that I should use for my web app? Or should I hook up a relational database or a non-relational database, right? No, just no, stop, right? Is this what really makes your hackathon project, your idea important? Think about think back to that MVP, right? Keep in mind what makes your product different to everyone else's and focus on that, because you've only got 24 hours. So start by mocking as much as you can of the system, right? Store your users or other object stuff in JSON blobs or CSV files. And where reasonable, don't be afraid to hard code things either. Okay, the tip is really about iterating. So iterate on that design. You can always add complexity later. Okay, just making a complex system at the beginning simple is a whole sort of fuzzball, right? So start simple. Now, as your team adds more features, complexity will grow naturally. So how do we stay on track, Andrew?
Yeah, so staying on track is obviously a challenge. You know, you've ideated, you've decided on your MVP, you've started all this work, you're really excited, but then you start burning the midnight oil or or not if you're not going all night, but you're burning the midnight oil, and then suddenly you hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. Like maybe the idea loses the shine a little bit, doesn't work quite as well as you thought, or maybe that technical challenge you want to build, like you're mocking all the stuff, but you've got this one technical thing you really want to build, and then you find it's not nearly as easy as you thought. It happens to everyone. I don't know a single project where this wouldn't happen. And so yes, very much. It's very important to make sure that you keep on track throughout the entire time you're working on your project. And so it's easy to keep powering through and hope you can get done. But if you work smart and you step back regularly, you can make sure that you do get launched and across the line. So there's sort of a few different tips for this, but I'm sort of putting them all together into one tip. But how to stay on track. First up, hold regular stand-ups. Stand-ups in software engineering are a pretty common thing. The idea is that you're doing a regular meeting every day rather than meetings every week or so. Keeping track and keeping updated on what your current trajectory is and how you're going. The format is that you say what I did yesterday, what I did today, what's blocking me. So you have goals for the next day. You have an update on how you met those goals from that previous day. And you also have blockers so people know how to unblock you so you can get your work done. Obviously, a day isn't a fast enough iteration cycle for a hackathon. So generally what you want to do is you want to do it every 1.5, 2 hours. Just get together informally to stand up because you don't want to stand up for too long. Keep it nice and short and non-interruptive, and just call out anything that's blocking your progress. With that in mind, with everyone saying what they aim to do by, in the next 2 hours, you're setting goals. You're setting regular goals and how you're going to progress on your project. And that's really important because if you can set those goals well, then you basically can look at them and see, okay, is this going to be a really big deal? Is this off track? Can we actually get this done on time? You're constantly reassessing and determining how you're going. And again, like adjusting your trajectory, not completely turning around, but just adjusting it a little bit to make sure you get in the right direction. Maybe cutting scope a little bit. But if you find you keep hitting issues or the idea isn't quite working, that's when you pivot. You need to make sure that you sort of, at some point, if it's really not working, you might want to make that decision to pivot. And in that case, the best thing you can do is take the Marie Kondo approach and see what brings you joy and find that sort of nugget in your code or in your project idea that made everyone's sort of heart sing when they were first talking about it. Find that and see what else you can do with it. A good example in the industry of this, the classic story is Slack. If you haven't used Slack, think Discord, but for businesses, Slack is, this chat software, but originally the company was making games and they're making a video game, and the video game didn't succeed, but they had this chat in the little corner on I think that was what it was, but they had some chat software they were using to organize development and also like do stuff in game. And the game didn't succeed, but that was such a cool little idea. They ended up turning that into a product, and that was really successful. On that topic, if you're going to reduce scope, make sure you do still have something you can demo. It's really cool to have that sort of actual finished product. So try and see if you can rescue some of that stuff and make it into something that you can play with and you can feel proud of at the end of it. So staying on track. Tip number 5 to summarize all of that, keep track of progress and then learn when to pivot if you need to. And that's iteration. That's all the tips for that done. And finally, we get to the last 2 points on presentation. So tip number 6, leave lots of time to repair your pitch. The pitch is one of the most important things. It's more important than some feel it should be, but in the end, if you're developing all this stuff, people don't know how long you've spent on it or what your idea is. The only way they know is through trying the product and through you telling them. And the pitch is so important when judges don't have much time to look through everything. You've got to explain the whole journey of what this idea is, what you're trying to solve, what the solution is, why it's good. There's all this stuff. You've got to make sure that you're on top of that pitch and you've got it prepared. And so the 3 general presentation tips. First, put someone in charge of getting a presentation ready. Someone whose sole job after, in the morning or evening, whatever the case. I think the latest you can really do it is the morning of the day that you're actually going to be presenting. But try and make sure you have adequate time to get a presentation together, even if it's just an in-person pitch. But have someone in charge of it so that they can manage it, they can keep track, and also they can have a copy of your software or whatever you're building that you can demo that is reliable. The worst thing you can have is praying to the demo gods that your demo is not going to crash and everything's going to work fine. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to have a local build that is guaranteed to work, ideally use version control or something like that to make sure that you have a build that you can rely upon. The next point is open company, no bullshit is a value of Atlassian. And you want to live up to that with your presentation too. You want to be honest about where you're at, what you've actually developed. Obviously, don't spend the whole presentation talking about what's smoke and mirrors and what isn't. But it's really hard for a judge to know and to rely on the fact that your project's actually good if they're not sure what's fake and what's not. The slicker a project gets, the more you kind of need to explain what's real, because people will get really suspicious. And generally, like exactly the thing, you've got that one technical achievement that you want to focus on and show people like, hey, I built this, we built this, it's really cool. If you have all this other stuff that is kind of smoke and mirrors, and you don't clarify the real functional bit, it can make it really tough for the judges to work that out. And finally, leading into that, because you've made it clear where you're at, you can go all out in sort of promising all these things of where the idea could go in the future. You want to have a future roadmap of all these ideas and things you could go in the future and develop based on this initial prototype. So you've built that column of 3 cards and you can drag things around. You want to sell the fact that people can integrate in, they can base their work on it, they can have checklists and people can be assigned tickets and stuff like that. You want to have that vision of where the product can go. So that was tip number 6. The final tip, tip number 7, is tell a story through your pitch. And that kind of relates to what I was saying here about selling a vision of your idea. There is a general format at Atlassian that tends to work for pitches. It's not a be-all and end-all. If you find another method that works for you, that's great. But the general format that tends to be in winning projects, certainly across the company, is the following. So let's say I'm pitching for Trello, getting back to that Trello example. First, you outline the problem space. People need to track the work they do. Really, really broad. Just build context and get people, understanding the problem space and how people are suffering through this particular problem. People aren't keeping track of their work. People are online and can't understand everything. Number point 2 is outline a specific problem. So in this case, people are online and they want to access all these tracking tools that used to be done in person, and it's a bit tricky to do. Then you outline potential and existing solutions. So for example, hey, there are existing solutions on the market that track tasks, plenty of them, but for small teams of people who are managing sort of personal tasks, they can be a little bit complicated by comparison and harder to set up. So there's a need for something that can solve it in a more simple way. But outline different potential solutions, get people in the space, make them feel like engineers trying to work out, how could I solve this problem? And that is when the prestige, you unveil your solution and you do a demo and you show off all the different features. And the important thing with a demo is you should make sure that demo has a journey of where you're starting and where you're finishing. A customer wants to assign a task to someone and track progress and move it around. You follow the journey of them, find the ticket, assigning someone, moving the card across a different board, all that different stuff, but make it a journey, and rather than just a checklist of like, hey, we built this feature and this feature and this feature. That doesn't sell anything. Once you've gotten to that, you go to part 5, you talk about the benefits of your approach, how it's so much better than all the competition, all the different things that make it great. And then part 6, the roadmap. Here's where we're at, here's what we've built, here's how we're feeling about it, here's where we want to go with it next. Here's what in some cases, if you're not completely happy, here's what I'd change. The sky's the limit for this kind of stuff, but that's a general format that tends to be helpful for presentations. And of course, there are many different ways to do it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of advice throughout the hackathon on how to do a good presentation, but this format tends to work quite well. So that's the 7 tips. And I'll hand back to Jonathan to summarize.
Yep, so to recap, here are the key takeaways. Go big with your ideas, right? Find a problem space that excites you and excites your team, and use Crazy 8 to help really brainstorm those ideas if you're at a loss. Settle on an MVP. From that idea, work out what you actually need to and really actually need to build, right? Stand on the shoulders of giants. Make use of existing tools to get started quicker and build quickly as well. And mock all the things. So start simple, add complexity as you go. Tip number 5 was track progress. So hold regular catch-ups, know when you need to pivot to stay on the right trajectory. And tip number 6, leave time to prep the demo. Right, the presentation is so important, and it's an important time for you to sell your idea as well. You want to connect with your audience by telling a story, right? So it may you may help it you may find it useful to use the format that we suggest, or you can add your unique style and make the demo your own. And what's a nice round number if we add 3 more tips at the end? If you're working on a team, use Git. If you're working as an individual, use Git. Okay, why? Maybe that'll be a question for later. Learn new things. This one's a bit of an imposter here because it's really not open to discussion. You will learn a lot of things during this hackathon, so be open to that learning. And finally, don't overdo, but take care of yourself, take breaks, drink water, and enjoy your hackathon. Thank you. After taking the questions.
Unfortunately, we're right on the edge of time for questions. But thank you, Andrew and Jono, for your amazing presentation. I wish I had that presentation when I did my first hackathon, and I'm sure I would have done a whole lot better. But yeah, so what we'll do now is we'll go off screen for a minute or so VMware can get their presentation ready, and then we'll come back on with VMware's workshop. Again, thank you, Andrew and Jono, so that we can get to your questions. Thank you, guys. Alrighty, guys. Please welcome the team from VMware.
G'day, gang. Good evening, and thanks for joining us.
I feel like the team from VMware has just had an extra member added. Welcome to VMware. I'm not sure. But no. Okay, cool. There we go. That's a little better. Can we go back one slide? Oh, yeah, that'll do. Thanks, Vince. So thanks all for joining. It was great to meet some of you earlier in the Discord chat with VMware. I'm Michael. I'm joined here by 2 of my fellow consultant grads. I got Carolyn below me and Vince too below me. And then above me and really on top of everything really is Sharman, who joins us as a solutions engineer. So kind of quite neatly following on from Atlassian's presentation on some top tips from our hackathon, we're going to talk about taking those great ideas that you guys have in development and taking those all the way into production. So our title's From Development to Production, Business and IT Operations. Next slide, please, Vince. And the first question that you may very validly ask yourself is, who is VMware and why on earth are they here talking to us? And you know what? That's a fair question. So if you don't know about us, the tagline is that we're the biggest software company you've never heard of. And you probably use our software every day, but you just don't know about it. So 99% or 99+% of Fortune 1000 companies in every industry actually use our software. And what is it? Well, kind of hard to talk about it without talking about the history. Back in the early 2000s, VMware was one of the first to commercialize virtualization for enterprise. And since then, we've grown and innovated to define entire data centers in software. And we're now committed to letting businesses run any application on any device hosted in any cloud. So given that you guys are application people and that it's Friday night, we figured we'd do something a little bit more fun this evening. And so what we're going to be talking to you guys about is we're going to be taking you through the hottest startup of 2020, the one that you guys came up with when you won this hackathon this weekend, and talking you people through some of the key considerations in architecting and scaling from scripts on a USB key all the way to world domination. Next slide, please, Vince. Righto, so I give you the hottest new startup of 2020. This is Nutstash. Now, building on some of the key trends of 2020 in terms of hoarding things, buy now, pay later, and just generally comparing the market, we want you to think about the plight of the modern working squirrel. No longer with a full day to work and run around in the trees, the modern working squirrel now works in an office, in a day job, and gets paid month to month, but still needs to buy all of their nuts for the winter. And so that represents quite a substantial outlay. Imagine 6 months of your food that you have to pay for with one paycheck. That's just not going to work. Enter Nutstash. Nutstash makes winter preparation super easy. With a single click, squirrels can compare prices from all the leading nut suppliers and then set out a payment plan to pay for their nuts throughout the winter. And this is the winning idea of the hackathon, the Squirrel University's hackathon of 2020, which we're just going to say for argument's sake you guys have come up with. So let's just say, okay, well, you guys have built the thing. What does it look like? Next slide, please, Vince. So, obviously this isn't an exhaustive list, but here's a couple of different services that your, Nutstash is going to come up with. Well, first of all, I'm Mr. Squirrel. I want to log in and I want to see all the best nut prices from all the leading nut vendors. And for that, I need a comparison engine with a series of APIs that plug into all the series of nut vendors who are going to play nice with me. And they all will, because everyone wants to buy a Nutstash. Then secondly, once Mr. Squirrel has chosen his designated nut vendor, you want to order those nuts. So there's going to be an ordering system. And then, well, because squirrels aren't what they used to be in terms of reliability, and let's face it, they were never there, Vince, you know the struggle. We need to run credit checks on them because, maybe their employment isn't secure. This is 2020 after all. We need to ensure that they can pay for their nuts. After that, we're going to move into a payment engine and a repayment engine, which is going to schedule payments on a regular basis. And there's a whole bunch of serious constituent parts there. And then finally, fulfillment. We got a logistics engine. We got to get these squirrels their nuts. So as you can see, there's a number of different services there, and that begs the question, how are we gonna architect these? How are we gonna host these? And for that, I'm gonna pass on to my fellow host, Charmin, who's gonna talk about architecture.
Thanks, Michael. As always, really informative. So let's start our discussion with understanding the underlying infrastructure, which platforms you would consider or decide to run applications on. So in this case, we have Nutstash. So I generally like to start off the discussion with understanding what microservices and containers are and recognizing that they're a really good tool, especially for enterprises to achieve continuous delivery for applications. As developers and people in IT, I'm sure you recognize that, this era of constant evolution that we always hear about and talk about is constantly moving towards using these new infrastructure resources, such as continuous containers and microservices, and the need to be modernize constantly using these monolithic applications. But at what point would you consider either using virtual machines instead of containers? See, virtual machines offer virtualization of hardware as well as operating system and create an efficient, isolated duplicate of a real machine. Whereas in the case of containers, only the operating system is virtualized and not the hardware. So what this does, it creates a really lightweight environment that houses the application and the dependent assets as well. Containers are the new and shiny thing within the development sector. And I remember asking myself this question when I wanted to know what the difference between virtual machines and containers was. And someone gave me a really good analogy. They told me that, virtual machines are to containers what trains are to airplanes. So while airplanes offer much more mobility and extensibility, we always are going to need to have trains for some journeys that airplanes just can't or aren't equipped to handle. So when you're starting off, right, especially when you're starting off and creating your ideas, understand what's your requirements, what do you need at your core, and what infrastructure can really support that. And whether it's extensibility, whether it's agility, understand what applications or what infrastructure can help you get there. And then there's always the question about whether to use microservices, virtual machines, or containers. And just to give you a few of the benefits that come with each of those services, I like to think that virtual machines are great for accessing different options for storage. So if it's durability that you're looking after, virtual machines have been around for ages, right? So there's a lot more on store, there's a lot more hand in terms of knowledge that comes with them. And there's a lot of extensibility when it comes to configuration as well. When you sit there and you start, deploying virtual machines, there's a lot of in-depth configuration that you can go towards, whether it comes to networking or storage or as much as you like, it's there. And virtual machines are really durable as well. So if it's strict security that you're after, it can easily be enabled, But then I also look at containers and I look at deploying containers, and they offer really independent execution environments, especially when paired with microservices. So what this offers you is better isolation. It's faster to execute them. When you set up your environment, you have networking all set up as well. It's really easy for you to have your containers set up. The execution time would be in seconds. And for Docker containers as well, they can be quickly launched, retired, and replaced at scale as well. So, and you can also automate this whole process as well. And many vendors out there have their own tools that help you automate this process. So it's very quick in that aspect. And then obviously everyone loves microservices in the development world, because you're basically taking, this service, this big service, and you're dividing it up into multiple little services within your application. So what this can do is it can accelerate deployment, but then it can also make troubleshooting the applications in their little tiny microservices much easier, And then when I look at, how I can analyze, then what you can do is you can take these little microservices and plug in, analysis tools, and you can really get a better understanding of how your consumers consuming those different services as well, So there's benefits that come with each one of these underlying infrastructure use cases, but it's up to you and how you would like to consume it and how you would like to maybe look at scaling on as well later down the track. Next slide, please, Vince. Perfect. So Nutstash has gone great. Within phase 2, you're looking at world domination. You've had some great success within your current market. People are loving it. But as people start to love your application, you will start to see that there's a need to scale. There's a need to not only scale within your region that you are in, but also scale maybe in different countries, different regions. And this can create more pressure on your existing underlying resources. So the main components that I think of when I think of resources, it's network and storage, but this can accelerate towards other key components as well. As an application provider, you need to make sure that you have a competitive edge. And this competitive edge can come from, making sure that your application is always available or highly available, which my colleagues will talk a little bit about down the track, because you want to make sure that, you're not constantly having your application go down, or support's just not really out there for the people who are trying to consume it. As obviously that makes the service not really required for people, and they probably won't prefer it as well, and they'll probably go to your competitors who offer a similar business plan to you as well. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that as you observe those trends, as you plug in your monitoring tools, that when you notice that you have those spikes within your environment, that you're able to scale up and scale down. And that brings me to my next slide, which is understanding where you're hosting these services. So where are you looking towards, maybe deploying when it comes to scaling out or scaling in? It is well known by now that cloud is here to stay, and it's important to familiarize yourself and for Nutstash to familiarize themselves as well with cloud. So when you're deciding on how you want to host the application, you essentially have 3 deployment options available at hand. And each of these different deployments will offer you a wider range of tools as well that you can look at. So I just want to give you a little bit of an insight into each one of these. When it comes to private cloud, a private cloud generally resides within your organization, and there's a lot of security mechanisms that come into play as well. You would have to consider deploying a firewall or some sort of intrinsic security that makes sure that your environment that it's contained within is highly secure. And then so only the organization and the people within would have access to it and can easily manage it as well. So for example, I'll give you the biggest example that I have. It's VMware itself. Our vSphere deployment is one of the greatest and best in markets, and it's really predominantly used worldwide by many organizations to manage the virtual environment as well. Apart from this, because it's centralized management, you can also make sure that you've incorporated compliance and legal requirements as well, and it saves you on a lot of costs as well later down the track. Then you have your public cloud. This includes cloud services that are exposed to the public and can be used by just about anyone. Virtualization is typically used to build the cloud services that are offered to the public. And an example of this, and I'm sure you've heard of it, is Amazon Web Services. So what this does, it gives you an access to a wide range of capabilities. And sometimes when people ask me, what's the benefit of going on public cloud? I always like to say that, look, if you're a startup and you're just about to create your application, then public cloud is probably the best way to go because there's no capital investments, no front-on investments to make. And you really look at how you're scaling up and how a demand will go up as well. And because they follow a pay-as-you-go model, so as you see your consumptions being more, you have more consumers on hand, you can pay as you go forward as well. And because it's an open environment, it's out there, the marketplace is generally a lot larger. A lot of people have access to that marketplace as well. So you will generally see that a lot of innovation happens here. There's a lot of people who are constantly adding to the environment as well and what the capabilities are. So you can make sure that you will have access to the greatest and best when it comes to the newest and greatest tools. And then hybrid, I like to think of as, a handshake between public and private cloud coming together. So the cloud services can be distributed among public and private clouds. So where you would have sensitive applications, which are generally kept inside the organization's network by using a private cloud, you can put these other services, which can be hosted outside the organization's network. And users can then use them interchangeably. And one of the best examples that I have of this is actually a partnership that's happening between VMware and AWS. We have a product called VMC. So it offers, our users, the organizations we have, the security that can be offered by private cloud and the centralized management, but then also give them the ability to scale into public cloud as well, where they have a little bit more agility, a little bit more flexibility with where they can go, and there's better resource support for remote workspace, and it gives you agility and the flexibility that is needed as you're starting off and you're starting to consume those resources. So I just want to summarize a little bit here. Think about your underlying infrastructure when you're starting off, especially when you're starting to create these incredible applications, and understand and maybe consider how you're going to scale as well and where you're looking to move as well. If you don't plan for the future, you're not really prepared for the present. So think of that. Now, I'm just going to pass on to my colleague, Vincent, who's going to dive a little bit deeper and give you a little bit more information in regards to these underlying services.
Alrighty then. So essentially speaking, now we're putting it all together in terms of concept. So, we've talked about microservices and the advantages, and, everyone knows it's hip and cool to have microservices and Kubernetes and all that. And, we want to be in public cloud and be highly available because move to the cloud is, the future, so-and-so. They've been saying that for a while. But overall, it's really about the focus on what is the payoff. And at the end of the day, Kubernetes is just another service, another resource. You make a resource claim on the fly, and but you still have to provision resource from a kube cluster, because as the saying goes, cloud and all these technologies, it's just someone else's server. So, the big cloud providers are K8's compatible, that's Kubernetes. But the process of spinning up kube clusters is pretty non-trivial and definitely not uniform. Even elastic clusters need to have their network built. You need to cover DNS, use software load balancers, and a bunch of network voodoo to make it all work. Otherwise, you put request release, and unfortunately speaking, some of your services might not come up. And yes, they have APIs, and it's supposed to be easy, but you're already locked into one infra provider then. Your AWS, DNS Route 53 doesn't necessarily carry over to your GCP or Azure services so clean. So the main takeaway is twofold. Infrastructure as code is really needed there to propagate full stack of your environment, And multi-cloud is not so easy. So at the crux of this issue, microservices and dynamic scale-out isn't even restricted to containers. So if you can't put it into a container and package it as a K8, then you can still orchestrate and automate it. Your applications really don't care how the inference is built, as long as it's done quick. And that's the aim of the game. So stage 3, Nutstash is getting ready for an IPO. And we need to increase profitability so we can release for those big dollars. Now, at the end of the day, we've already got our global presence and we've almost made it. But your CFO says, you need to improve the numbers. You need to improve the profitability. So what does that mean? Some of you guys with IT experience might be thinking, all right, let's smash that ticket queue, get it super low, go on a bug hunt, make sure our product is beautiful for release. No, absolutely not. Finance does not care about those particular numbers. They're talking about performance metrics. And if we look at our slides here, we're talking about ops capacity in terms of end user latency, click-through rate, that's directly related to our profitability. App performance, the efficiency, we really want to, make sure that we're pumping out the max sessions per app. We're not, needing to scale out too drastically just to handle, a few extra sessions. We want to get that efficiency way up. And, reducing ingress. That's a big question as to, just because your application logic might want to send the traffic over, can we do it without doing that sending? Because literally we're consuming extra CPU cycles, extra, workload, and, you're slowing our things down. So really that performance optimization in terms of your application design is crucial here. And overall, it just comes down to, overhead. We want to minimize overhead that isn't actively bringing us product. We want to prune it down and, no over provisioning. And this comes down to a concept of, just-in-time provisioning. You resource exactly how you need it when you need it. And that's the heart of dynamic scaling. So, on the right-hand here side, you see that we've got our toolbox of, things that help us achieve these goals. And, we got lean applications and microservices. We've also got caching and proxying. For example, you might want to maintain a static cache and centralize that on, certain content that is static. And, that's literally saving you CPU cycles. So, you need to think about your architecture on what is being demarcated where and where we can offload work. Because as the Atlassian colleagues wonderfully said, if you don't have to do it, don't do it. Get someone else to do it. So yeah, obviously, the final question comes to be, we've got all these metrics. How do I know I'm doing a good job? And that's a question of visibility. If you don't have visibility of these success metrics, you don't have anything to optimize and scale. So front-end guys, you 100% be able to tell you that. So, your internal, your external statistics, you need to be keeping on track of this. Your week-on-week trends, your performance dashboards, someone can do it, implement it. A lot of APIs that can do that. So make sure you're staying on top of it and incentivizing it. Don't put it in as an afterthought. Back into bugs and errors, classic DevOps, don't ship broken code, do it incrementally. And, this relates to your uptime. And that's, more dollars. So, your continuous integration delivery, that's pretty much just making sure that you get everything right on release. Overall, there are some tertiary considerations around data integrity and synchronization and authentication. You guys know the gist. Don't salt your code and make sure you're implementing best practices. Do it early on. Don't leave for the last minute. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot more expensive down the line when you've already scaled up your application 10-tiled. All right, and finally, what does this look like in practice? So, my colleague Shami has already gone over the fact that we are pretty much partnered with AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. So, when it comes to multi-cloud, we're pretty out there. So yeah, we're integrated in the API brokers. So, like we previously alluded to, if you don't need to do it yourself, don't do it. Let us do it. That's a good way to do it. Or any other provider that happens to have all these partnerships. I'm waiting still. And, these metrics, we want live metrics on, how we're performing, what our needs to be. And, when it comes to predictive dynamic loading, it really comes down to, you need to know your forecast and react on said forecast. And, finally, it comes down to that automation piece. So, Kubernetes or whatever, you need to automate it and make sure that it's reliable in a way that you can scale up without any second thoughts. And, just match demand. And finally, you've got all sorts of SaaS services that can be consumed. Ideally speaking, if they're intrinsically embedded in full stack, like we are, then, that's a no-brainer. Cool. Hand off to my colleague, Carol, now.
Thanks, Vince. So last, but arguably one of the most important phases is ensuring your data is reliable and highly available. So to achieve this, we first need to consider your recovery time objective, which is the allowable amount of downtime a business is willing to endure, and your recovery point objective, which is the amount of data loss that you are willing to incur at any given time. So RTO and RPO are important baselines to determine how resilient your infrastructure is to any service disruptions. And you can do this by reserving additional resources so that in the event of any outages, applications and workloads can be restarted, or if there is a sudden increase in workload demand, load balancing can help manage network traffic. Furthermore, in terms of backup, each company has their own backup policy, and it's usually also influenced by their industry laws. For example, in the context of Nutstash, being in the financial sector, Nutstash is required to maintain metadata for a minimum of 5 years. Because the reliability of information is crucial to their day-to-day operations, data should be backed up pretty regularly, so maybe about every hour, with RAID configurations on their data store as well. So moving on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so now we're going to consider from a physical standpoint, availability and regions and availability domains. So availability domains looks at data centers, while availability regions is just the geographical location of these data centers. So these regions are usually connected by low latency, high bandwidth connection to enable high availability access to internet. And the primary benefit of this is that if one data center goes down because they are not physically connected together, other data centers are still running. And so your applications and workloads can be moved and restarted onto a different availability zone. And this, again, would come with some downtime depending on your RTO and RPO objectives. So we at VMware actually have solutions that help you do this with vSphere High Availability and vMotion as well. Now, in terms of latency, some key steps to conquering latency are to serve users within the closest zone. For example, if I'm in Sydney, I should be accessing the availability zone in Sydney instead of, let's say, Wollongong. And next, we can try to also pre-process as much as possible to reduce the burden on your network I/O traffic. That way, we can ensure an efficient operational process. So lastly, you also want to make sure that the source and destination target are within the same zone. This is so that packets can be sent and received reliably and quickly as well. So as Sharmin spoke on scaling globally before, reliability and availability should be integral to your business strategy and something that you would consider when you are thinking from a business perspective as well. Thanks for listening. If we have some extra time, we're happy to take some questions as well.
Cool. Thank you, VMware team. As they just said, please write any questions you have for the VMware team in the comments and I'll put them up on the screen. We have around 4 minutes. I guess I'll start off because I've had a few private messages that have come in to me, not in the public domain. They missed out on the first bit of the hackathon and this first part of their presentation, but if you guys could explain what VMware is for those that don't know.
Sharmin, do you want to jump in? You're the sales expert on this one.
So VMware is a virtualization platform, right? So we have a bunch of things that we do at hand, but we started off with virtualizing, taking the x86 architecture and basically taking the hardware which was underutilized and overutilizing it. So on this one device that you have in front of you, you can run multiple systems together. Putting in layman's term, you can have multiple, machines running, whether it be using operating system, which operating system you want to use, so Windows or Linux. So I'm sure you guys remember parallel desktops. It's basically taking that approach and having multiple of those, running on that system. And what VMware does is we basically started that process, and what we've done now is we've gone into network virtualization. So what we do, and we do great, is we take physical hardware and we virtualize it. So we make it so that you can use it at a larger scale, and you're basically getting more bang for your buck in that case. So what you can do is you can have virtual networks as well that will allow you for greater agility. So you're able to, consume them at a larger scale. And so, and you can kind of basically also do this for storage as well. So we take different vendors' storage capabilities and combine them with those networks and kind of allow those systems to connect together using that same mechanism. I know it's a bit of a confusing concept to get across, but we take hardware and we make it virtual as well. So, and we do this, and we're starting to do this with a lot of other aspects as well. We have made a lot of acquisitions, and now we're going towards, so we've taken the storage space with our, software storage applications, and we've gone into networking, and now we're going into Kubernetes and intrinsic security spaces as well with our Carbon security application, and then also going towards PKS, which is pivotal through that as well. Hopefully that answered the question for you.
Yeah, definitely did. Thank you for that. We also have a question from Sam Block, which basically said, do you have any tools or recommendations for syncing between multiple servers for HA? I'm assuming that's Hackathon. I guess if you're any technical people in your team, if they'd like to answer that.
Sounds like high availability, or as opposed to Hackathon, I'm guessing. That's
yes.
probably the. That's probably what you're after.
Don't worry, Bradley. We
Yeah,
don't
that's
blame you. There's a lot of acronyms that come into play. We all are aware of this when we join. But you guys, any of you take that across?
Yeah, there's a number of technologies within at least the vSphere stack and all our virtualization technology at VMware that lets you run, for instance, two versions of a same machine, so that if one crashes, the next one just takes over, or similarly, that if one crashes, the other one just restarts somewhere else. So there's a number of ways that you can do that. Vince, I'm not sure if you can do that on a smaller scale without like an enterprise.
At the end of the day, HA is just down to maintaining availability within a cluster. So the really poor man's version of that is just to have very good health checks within inter-app so that they have awareness. And the minor key in the puzzle is to be able to cut over your load balancer based on failure health checks. So when it comes to just being aware on that availability, it really comes down to that visibility and operations consideration as to what can replace what. So when it comes to specifics, maybe reach out to me later. But that is kind of the general concept of cluster HA versus guest OS and application availability.
Cool. Thank you for that. I was embarrassed now. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for questions, but I thank all of you for attending and presenting your presentation. It was really insightful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to stay in the wonderful time, and we'll maybe join the Slack a little bit later if anyone had any really pressing questions. Otherwise, thanks. The Discord.
Best of luck, everyone.
Thank you.
And have fun on your hackathon. That needs to be said. It's a good experience.
Yes. As I said, we'll go back off the line again, and then we'll get Business Solutions to come online and present their presentation. So once again, thank you guys. Alrighty, joining me here is Lashika and a fellow colleague, and they're going to be presenting a workshop on sensors used in robotics and real-world applications. So I'll hand it over to Lashika. We can't hear you, Lashika.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that again then. So thank you, Atlassian and VMware, for your interesting talks, all very relevant problems that we encounter at Abyss as well. So I'll start my talk. So, and thank you for staying so late, for those who are still here. So this talk will cover, just from my experience, using sensors and trying to just expose it in a way that you guys can play around with it as well. So yeah. So just quickly about Abyss, I think many already know, but we're an robotic inspection company. Started in 2014, expanded internationally now. I think right now our most recent endeavor is in Angola, and our field robotics engineer is currently sitting in quarantine for another week. So yeah, a lot of interesting things that we do. We do inspections of all kinds of assets, dams, tunnels. We do 3D reconstructions and measurements. We deploy robots through tunnels as well as collect that data. We look at information coming from sewer pipes and automate that process because it's not fun to look at sewer pipe data. And also look at corrosion and planning for that sort of action. So quite a lot of things. And for this talk, so just the background is that, in all our work, we use sensors to collect that data. We interact with that data as well to get useful information out of it. And, and finally, we give, actionable insight to the client who is paying us for that inspection. So, yeah, the sensors, they give outputs based on some interaction with the real world. That's what they do. There's a large variety. You have many in your smartphones as well. I'm sure you're aware. Sensors also can be modeled. And those models help to interpret that sensor data. Seems a bit of an abstract idea, but I'm sure you'll have some idea of how to do that implementation as well in some way. So robots take this action based on that interpretation of that data as well. So, I detected that I'm close to a wall. I want to stay away from that wall. How do you detect that you're close to a wall? Maybe using a laser. How do you move away? I'm going to use a thruster to the correct thruster to move away. So all this is in a loop, yeah, it's the action and sensing cycle, and sensing is a big part. So an example, a simple one is that you have a magnetic sensor. So it measures the magnetic field. So this is in micro Teslas. Then how do you use this information that's coming in? It's saying 10, 90, and 30 in the X, Y, and Z axes. So you need a mathematical model to interpret that information, and you need some sort of calibration, which is like to see how that sensor in particular may be set up. So you would maybe move it in different ways. I think a lot of you are sometimes prompted to use your smartphone and move around it around, and that's to calibrate the magnetic sensor in particular to give you your heading, especially navigation. So yeah, out of it all comes out an estimate of your rotation of that sensor, which is then attached to your device, so you know the rotation of the device. And this is a fundamental principle even to the compass from using for many centuries now, all the way to any electronic sensors that use semiconductors and its interaction with that environment and some sort of output you can use. So just an overview of this talk. I'm going to look at smartphone sensors because this is something that I'm pretty sure pretty much everyone has some sort of access to, and how they extend to robotics. So if you can get your head around what your smartphone is doing for a lot of its stuff, including location, AR, a lot what your apps do with even your camera. You'll be halfway there to maybe most of the way there to doing a lot of stuff with robotics. So the hardware I'm going to talk about is sensors. The software are the algorithms used to interpret that data.
And there's different usage domains for all this. You know, the robot you have in the air have just different constraints than ones you have on the ground and ones you have underwater. And these sensors have different, needs that they feel. So some are GPS, as like navigation, which an example is GPS, allows you to figure out where you are. Some are payloads. So this is like, the thing that you're collecting that you want to make use of. So, you take pictures of something that's like a payload sensor. And there's like diagnostic sensors, and there's, this is not exhaustive. So there's many types, but, and a diagnostic sensor could be something like just checking the temperature of your phone because, maybe you want to scale the processor or something. I don't want to get too hot and break. So in terms of camera hardware, so I'm going to start with cameras because it's like a very important sensor and everyone has access to it on your phone. So you can use it as the payload. So you collect the data and that's the thing that's interesting. For example, at Abyss, you'd collect, pictures of some asset and it happens to have a crack on it. So that's that's like payload data. But then you also can do navigation with the camera. You use it to do optical flow. You do something to like track where you're moving around, and that can be achieved in software to figure out how you move based on how your images are changing. So something somewhat limiting about smartphones, but there are a lot of like tricks you can do in software to help deal with it, is something known as rolling shutter. So rolling shutter is basically when an image is taken on the sensor in your smartphone. I think every single smartphone, unless something's been released very recently, they scan it in and then start from the top again and scan it in if you do a video. So here's an example of what global shutter versus rolling shutter looks like. If I pause it here, you can see, so global shutter, if I didn't bring that up, global shutter is all the pixels on the camera are taken at the exact same time. There's no delay. There's no scanning. So global shutter, you can see this helicopter is spinning really quick. With global shutter, the blades are still straight. But with a rolling shutter, they bend. So this is just some of the things you have to consider. And I've tried to do projects, and other people have tried to do projects with the smartphone cameras, and it often can be it's actually more difficult than using expensive, tricky cameras. So these more sophisticated cameras, some have rolling, but very quick rolling, so it doesn't matter even for these speeds. Or you have global shutter, and they tend to be more expensive. They're robotic. They're considered robotic sensors and specialty sensors, thousands of dollars. But they help you in certain situations. But smartphones, even with their rolling shutter, I think different phones just do such an amazing job these days. There's barely a difference. And you can do a lot with that rolling shutter camera, even in high dynamic situations. So then there's things like lens choice. On the smartphone, you only have a tiny lens, but you have the option of sticking a nice lens on, which reduces the distortion in the image, lets more light in. You don't have to keep your shutter so long to get the motion, so you might not get motion blur. So these are the other things, like with a camera sensor, you take a picture and, sometimes when it's really dark, it's like grainy. That's because the gain on the sensor had to be put up so high, the noise starts to dominate. So in order to deal with that, you either introduce light into the scene, or you have a more sensitive low light camera. So again, another consideration in buying your hardware. So another thing with camera hardware is, exposure. So basically when a camera takes a picture, it opens the thing and closes it, and all the light that hit the sensor, it converts it into, bits basically. And the longer you keep it open, the more light comes in, so the brighter the image. But then also if you move during that time, it's going to blur. So that's what motion blur is about. So there's that as well. And yes, can be solved with just throwing money at the hardware, but sometimes you can do clever things with the software as well. And yeah, you have different requirements in different domains. You have size, weight, and also what frequency you want to look at. You might have an IR camera, or some hyperspectral camera, which has very specific frequencies it looks at because you're interested in that. Also, you need to do calibration and you need to fix your lighting. For example, if you're aerial vehicle, you're probably not going to supply the light because you're too far away from stuff. So you're probably not going to do stuff at nighttime if you can help it. But if you do something at night, you're going to have a very strong light and you might have to get close to the object. And same for nighttime on the ground. But underwater, for example, even in the middle of the day, you go 100 meters underwater and there's no light. So you always need light, and that's a consideration for this as well. So the software. So camera software nowadays, there's a lot of libraries available. You can do a lot with just the data you collect from your phone, for example. And there are a lot of libraries, machine learning, computer vision. Maybe you've heard of OpenCV or ENet or YOLO or TensorFlow, more popular, or Caffe, maybe a bit old now. But these are all these machine learning, deep learning backends, which you can apply to, for example, solve the problem here, which is basically you have an image and you want to segment that image into certain classes. You need to train this on a lot of images to get to this point. And that training is another thing these backends help you with. You have to throw lots of images, lots of labeled images. And labeling images is not a fun job and is extremely valuable. And you need a lot of it to get these things working. So that's sometimes the harder thing to do, to collect that data and to label everything. But once you're there, you can get amazing results in segmenting out things in your video or images. Another thing you can do with camera software is photogrammetry. So basically you take images around your object and then using basically a camera model and optimization techniques and along with feature matching. So these features may include different types. But for example, it could be Harris corners, SIFT, if you guys want to look those up yourself. And that allows a 3D reconstruction of something, and that 3D reconstruction can be a valuable product in itself. In computer games, you have a lot of this occurring, and there's a lot of free software out there. If you just want to try it with your phone, you can make these 3D models from scratch, and it's pretty cool. So another thing is, say we want to figure out where our camera is moving in space. There's techniques known as visual odometry or simultaneous localization and mapping. So these use, again, the features that you find in the image. They're a bit abstracted detail, but it's basically trying to emulate how we kind of track things with our brain as well. We see features not just as pixels, we see them as like these objects. So that's how they try to abstract these features as well when we use them. So we can then, and you can even do these, I think there's open source implementations with your phone. You can go ahead and track the location of your phone and map your environment at the same time using this. The final products are often extremely impressive considering that. And so you can also do things like augmented reality. And I think you guys might have played around with the Google AR or the Apple AR sort of libraries. So just amazing things you can do with phones these days and with lots of libraries available for it. So there's more sensors on the smartphones, obviously, than the camera. And actually, the sensors in your phone compared to robots, it's not so different. Sometimes the quality of the sensor, because you just have more space than a phone, obviously, on the robot is going to be better, but all the principles pretty much apply. So you have this thing called an IMU. So an IMU it has an accelerometer. It basically has sensors in the X, Y, and Z direction. So X, Y, and Z can be however you want, but it's basically, to the side, to the front, and upwards. That could be X, Y, Z if you decide. So if you have an accelerometer, if you just sat it on a table, a perfectly flat table, and you had a perfect IMU, it would say 0 acceleration on one side on the forward, 0 acceleration on the lateral side, the y, and there would be in the z direction about 9.8 meters a second squared. So that's what the accelerometer is going to pick up. But of course, you move it in space, and then the gravity vector moves with the with how you're moving it. So that's an accelerometer, and if you accelerate it, of course, if you have an object in free fall, it's going to show zeros on all those things. So this is a sensor that allows you to track how it's accelerating in space and its orientation. But then you also have a gyroscope. So a gyroscope, it uses the gyroscopic effect, although modern sensors, like kind of not quite true gyros, they kind of do this tricky thing with vibration to achieve the gyroscopic effect. But basically, you spin a gyro, and if you spin a gyro and you move the gyro in space, in orientation, it will exert a force in one direction, and this force can be measured. So, and that force is proportional to the speed at which your orientation is changing. So that means you can get the position in space, in 3D space, in orientation of that. And anyway, but in phones, it's mainly just to get roll and pitch. Roll is side to side, pitch is front and back. And I'll just quickly go through like GPS. You guys know that needs sky view. Magnetic has local errors if you got a big magnet in the environment or even big pieces of steel. Barometer checks pressure, so it allows you to get the height off the ground with some calibration. And there's some example apps you can use to do this to see these sensors in action. This was just on the side here. There's a sensors multi-tool on Android, which I just showed just before. It shows the local magnetics, and it can be converted into orientation if you want. On iPhone, there's a sensors toolbox as well. You can also log sensor data with the phone, and there's heaps of libraries available if you want to do something interesting with that. So we have AR, which exploits a lot of these concepts. I'll just reduce the volume here. No. Anyway, so basically AR, augmented reality, allows you to basically track the environment in real time, exploiting things like the camera features and your IMU. So this allows you to do measurement in real space. And this is the Google AR library is available for you to try to use. And then there's further sensing that you won't get on your phone, but it's applied in robotics. You have acoustics, a lot of stuff in underwater, sonar, range pings, and velocity things, because underwater GPS doesn't work, so it's tricky. LiDAR, so a lot of autonomous cars use LiDAR. It's really good to get really quick point clouds. You don't need to process it, it just gives you it. It relies on time of flight of the light, basically, and detects the return. And there's also like force feedback to do grasping and manipulation tasks. You want to sense the force that you're putting. So you don't, in this example, you don't want to crush the cup. You want to just grab it nicely, and you need some feedback there. So anyway, thank you. Thanks for staying so late. And I'm here for any questions. And if you want to send an email to me with any questions, I'm more than happy to take them as well.
Cool. Thank you very much, Lashika. That was a very interesting presentation. Unfortunately, we've come right to the end of our presentation slot, but I'm sure that you will be happy to answer questions at any time using that email, and I'm sure you'll be on the Discord somewhere. But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it was very interesting. So I'll just go through now the main points that we have left before we get started on hacking time. Let me just put this in presenter view. Okay, so basically now we have some announcements and reminders for you. Please do fill in the group registration form once you have a group, if you're still looking for a group or still creating groups. Otherwise, if you don't do this, you will not be eligible for any prizes. Our executive team and our helpers and our subcommittee have been working hard to create our mentor lists for you all to get mentoring help tomorrow morning. The mentor list will be coming out soon in the announcements channel, so please do keep an eye out for it. And all the important info, such as the full event schedule, is already posted in the announcements channel. And of course, keep all the memes coming in. We love to see all the memes. These are what's going to keep us going, I guess, for the whole 40 hours. So yeah, please do keep the memes posted and keep track of who the popular ones are. And I guess in a few minutes, hacking does not quite start now, but at 7 p.m, hacking will start. We've also had a few questions about some communication channels that you guys can use. Please do make use of communication channels, because communication is vitally important to winning in a hackathon, or even just getting a great product out there in a hackathon. So we do advise you to use things like Slack, or create your own channel on Discord, even Messenger. These all are great products that will help you communicate with your teammates. Feel free to get to know each other before getting to start hacking. Also, in your mentoring sessions, it's completely fine not to have any ideas, as long as you have an idea of where to go. Your mentors will be there to help you to further extend your ideas and give you tips for getting a great mark for your hackathon. Other than that, that brings us to the end of our opening ceremony. We do wish you luck. And if you do have any questions, again, please do ask in the Ask Syncs channel. Otherwise, we will see you for mentoring sessions on Saturday and our workshops on Saturday. And yeah, good luck. We will see you soon. Bye, everyone.